What if your greatest strength wasn't in pushing harder, but in letting go more wisely? Have you ever wondered why some people move through life with grace, while others constantly crash into resistance? There's a quiet power in surrender, not weakness, but mastery, and the Stoics understood this better than most. There's an old saying, a river doesn't force itself through the rocks, it flows where the path is smoothest. And yet, how often do we find ourselves fighting against the natural currents of life? We push, we resist, we strive so fiercely to make things go our way. But in the end, what meets us isn't peace, it's frustration, exhaustion, disappointment. The Stoics offered a truth that cuts through this chaos. Do not force what is not meant to be. At first, it may sound passive, but it's anything but. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." A powerful insight, but one that is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean we should bulldoze our way through every obstacle like a battering ram. The wisdom lies in knowing when to push and when to pause. Think of a man lost in a dense forest. He panics, charges forward through the underbrush, desperate to find a way out, only to end up tangled, scraped, and further off course. But if he slows down, breathes, and begins to observe the natural openings in the trees, something changes. A path emerges, not because he forced it, but because he aligned with it. Life works the same way. The more we try to force a specific outcome, the more resistance we create. But the moment we accept what is, without surrendering our values, things begin to shift. We stop fighting, and we start flowing. This is the art of effort without struggle, of movement without desperation. It's the difference between swimming with the current and thrashing against it. It's the ability to see that not all locked doors are meant to be pried open, some are closed for a reason. The peace we long for doesn't come from dominance. It comes from discernment, from knowing what to pursue and what to release. So, how did the Stoics master this delicate balance between action and acceptance? And how can you apply that same mindset in your own life to cultivate resilience, patience, and quiet strength? Let's begin with the first powerful lesson, the art of letting go. Picture this. You're gripping a rope, pulling it tightly toward you, determined to win. But the more you tug, the more it resists. Your muscles tense, friction builds, it starts to burn. But the moment you release that rope, what happens? The tension disappears. Life works in the same way. We cling tightly to relationships, outcomes, expectations, even identities, believing that if we just try harder, we'll make it work. But as Epictetus once reminded us, some things are up to us, and some are not. The key is learning the difference. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means releasing our emotional attachment to things we cannot control. A farmer cannot demand rain, but he can plant with care, water with patience, and trust that nature will do the rest. The same applies to us. To surrender isn't to stop trying. It's to shift our energy toward what's within our reach. A musician doesn't force a song into existence. They practice, listen, and allow the melody to rise from silence. A sculptor doesn't attack the stone. They follow its shape, uncovering the form hidden within. Think of a river winding through a valley. It doesn't crash against every ridge. It curves. It bends. It flows along the path carved by time and gravity. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Similarly, in our own lives, not everything needs to be forced. In fact, the more we push beyond reason, the more we often block the very peace we seek. So how do we begin to recognize which efforts serve us, and which ones are slowly drowning us? The moment we begin to force life in a direction it isn't meant to go, we invite unnecessary struggle. It's like trying to swim upstream in a river that's gently trying to carry us forward. Our own resistance becomes the source of suffering. Every time we grip too tightly, trying to bend circumstances to our will, we create friction. That friction drains our energy, clouds our perspective, and blinds us to the natural paths opening right before us. How often does something that seems like a loss, a missed opportunity, a broken relationship, a failed plan, eventually reveal itself as a turning point? A business deal that doesn't go through might free up space for one that aligns more deeply with your purpose. A relationship that ends painfully might clear the way for a love that is more grounded, more true. A failure that breaks your heart today may be the seed of wisdom and resilience that defines your future success. This is the kind of awareness the Stoics lived by. They taught us to see every door that closes not as the end of something, but as the beginning of something else. Not all resistance is an enemy, but forcing something that isn't aligned with nature certainly is. There's an art in knowing when to take action, and when to step back and allow life to unfold on its own terms. There's a season to plant, and there's a season to wait for what you've planted to grow. There's a time to speak, and a time to listen. Attempting to control everything is like trying to squeeze water in your fists. The tighter you grip, the faster it escapes. But when you soften your hands, when you open your palms, the water simply rests there, still, balanced, and untouched. So pause and ask yourself, where in your life are you holding on too tightly? What are you afraid will disappear if you release your grip, even a little? The truth is both freeing and humbling. What is meant for you cannot be forced away. And what isn't meant for you will never stay, no matter how desperately you try to hold on. Letting go is not a loss. It's a form of liberation. When we surrender what we cannot control, we create space for peace, for growth, for something more aligned to take root. Each time you feel tension, pressure, or anxiety building, take a breath and ask, am I forcing something that isn't meant to happen right now? The more you loosen that grip, the more space you give life to breathe through you, and often, that's where the magic happens. Lesson 2. Flowing with life. Lao Tzu, a timeless thinker whose wisdom often echoes Stoic ideals, once said, "By letting it go, it all gets done." Look to nature for proof. The ocean does not fight the wind, it moves with it. Trees do not resist the storm, they bend. And in doing so, they survive. The strongest things in nature are not always those that resist the most, but those that adapt with quiet strength. Consider the mighty oak, proud, rigid, unmoving, but under great pressure, it snaps. Now contrast that with the willow, swaying softly with the wind. It yields, but it does not break. The more we resist the natural rhythms of life, the more pain we invite. But when we begin to move with life, instead of against it, we start to discover something rare: harmony. Seneca once wrote, "Fate leads the willing, but drags the unwilling." If we insist on controlling every outcome, if we treat resistance as something to overcome instead of a signal to redirect, we drain ourselves. We miss the gentle cues life offers us. To force an outcome is to fight the order of nature. The Stoics embraced a principle known as amor fati, the love of fate. It's not just about accepting what happens. It's about embracing it, trusting that even in detours and disappointments, there is wisdom being offered. So the question becomes, what if the obstacles you're trying so hard to break through are actually meant to guide you? Just like a river that changes course to flow around an obstacle, real strength often lies not in resistance, but in redirection. The same wind that can break a sail can also propel a ship forward. If the sailor learns to adjust his sails and work with its force rather than against it, life is no different. There are moments when we must stop fighting the tide and begin steering with awareness. Instead of wasting energy in resistance, we allow life to guide us, not passively, but skillfully. There is tremendous power in learning to move with the current rather than against it. This does not mean surrendering to fate blindly or waiting idly for miracles. It means recognizing the profound difference between purposeful effort and desperate struggle. The most effective leaders, the most fulfilled creators, and the most content individuals all seem to share a rare ability to know when to lean in and when to step back, when to persist and when to pivot. They don't force the world to conform to them, they adjust, adapt, and flow with wisdom. A river never forces itself through solid rock. It finds the soft earth, the smallest crevice, and over time, shapes its own path with patience and persistence. It carves beauty into the land not through violence, but through constancy. In the same way, when we learn to trust the flow of life, we release unnecessary tension, and in that release, something opens, a gateway to new opportunities, hidden paths, and peaceful alignment with what already is. Surrender, in this context, is not defeat, it's an act of wisdom. It's the art of aligning with the truth of the moment rather than endlessly wrestling with it. To move with life is to cultivate patience. To trust the process is to build resilience. And through both, we gain clarity that allows us to make decisions not from fear or pressure, but from understanding. Imagine a gardener tending to his plants. He does not pull on the stems hoping they will grow faster. He does not rage at the skies when the rain delays. Instead, he waters with care, adjusts for each season, and trusts nature's rhythm. He succeeds not by controlling nature, but by cooperating with it. Likewise, in our lives, we often delay our own growth by trying to control every outcome. We push too hard, too fast, but by softening, by allowing ourselves to align with timing rather than fight it, we move forward with clarity and momentum. This is true not only in personal growth, but in our ambitions. Entrepreneurs, creators, and innovators succeed not because they cling to one rigid plan, but because they know how to pivot, to adjust, to see a better opportunity just beyond their original idea. They ride the wave instead of trying to build a dam. And this principle carries into our relationships, too. The strongest friendships and most meaningful connections are those that evolve naturally. When we try to shape a relationship to fit a mold, forcing someone to meet our expectations, we suffocate it. We create tension, and tension eventually cracks even the best intentions. But when we give people space, when we allow connection to unfold organically, we make room for something deeper: mutual trust, understanding, and shared growth. Romantic relationships, especially, flourish when both partners grow together, not under pressure, but through shared alignment. True intimacy arises not from force, but from flow. And the same can be said of mastering any skill. Whether it's music, a new language, or even coding a website, progress never comes from demanding instant perfection. A musician doesn't create beauty by rushing the notes. A language learner doesn't gain fluency by memorizing every word at once. A programmer doesn't write elegant code by brute force. They all step into rhythm. They show up daily. They respect the process. So ask yourself, are you forcing growth? Or are you trusting the process? True growth rarely happens in bursts. Just like learning an instrument or mastering a skill, it takes rhythm, timing, and trust. No one builds a flawless app overnight, nor crafts a symphony in a single sitting. What matters is patience, and the willingness to let the process unfold without resistance. The more rigid we become in our approach to life, the more fragile we are under pressure. But those who remain adaptable, fluid, and open-minded discover something remarkable. They don't just survive challenges. They glide through them with grace. They learn to use the current of life, instead of fighting against it. This isn't about giving up your ambition. It's about changing how you carry it. Once you embrace this mindset, even your setbacks begin to look different. A door closing no longer feels like the end of the road. It becomes a quiet signal that you're being redirected towards something better. That missed job offer? That failed project? That moment of rejection? These might be the detours guiding you to the exact place you were meant to reach, but couldn't see just yet. To practice this in your life, start by becoming aware of where you feel the most resistance. Ask yourself, am I forcing a solution that isn't working? Am I holding on too tightly to something that may not even serve me? Often, it's in those moments, when everything feels like it's grinding against us, that life is trying to steer us somewhere new. Letting go of force creates space, and in that space, something better can grow. By learning to flow with change instead of clinging to control, we move into a life of greater peace, wisdom, and fulfillment. The next time something doesn't go your way, pause, and instead of forcing it, gently ask, what lesson is life offering me here? That single shift, from fighting to listening, can change everything. Lesson 3. Nature's wisdom, the art of timing. Think for a moment about the seasons. Winter never rushes into spring. Fruit doesn't ripen in haste. Every part of nature has its own rhythm, and it follows it faithfully. So why do we believe our lives should be any different? Marcus Aurelius offered timeless advice: never be in a hurry. Do everything quietly and in a calm spirit. But in today's world, that wisdom often gets drowned out by the glorification of hustle. We're constantly told to speed up, to move faster, to produce results yesterday. But true mastery, real, Lasting fulfillment comes not from rushing, but from understanding timing. Growth isn't a race, it's a journey, and every step has its season. A tree does not command the sun to rise quicker, nor does it beg the clouds for faster rain. It takes in what's given and grows patiently within the conditions of its environment. That's where its quiet strength lies, in alignment, not control. And yet, in our rush to succeed, to arrive, to achieve, we often sabotage our own progress. We burn out before the finish line. We crush potential under pressure. But those who trust their timing, they grow with resilience. They don't break when progress is slow, they build deeper roots. This truth holds across all areas of life. A business launched before it's ready may collapse under its own weight. An idea rushed to execution might miss the brilliance it could have held if nurtured with time. Relationships, whether romantic or platonic, require space and care to mature. Press them too hard, too fast, and they crack under unmet expectations. Everything meaningful takes time. Patience is not laziness, it's insight. It allows us to move without force, to choose wisely, and to wait for alignment instead of chasing blindly. Pacing yourself doesn't mean slowing down your dreams. It means giving them the right soil, the right season, and the right light to grow into something lasting. And sometimes, the most profound transformation happens not while sprinting toward the goal, but in the quiet pauses between. Trusting the timing of our lives means learning to value what happens beneath the surface, those quiet, often invisible phases of growth that most people overlook. A young artist doesn't perfect their craft in a single night. A composer doesn't write a symphony in one sitting. A novelist doesn't produce a timeless manuscript in the first draft. True skill, like nature, unfolds with time, through repetition, revision, and patience. Each mistake, each attempt, each hard-won lesson becomes part of the larger creation. It's not just the outcome that defines mastery, but the journey. With all its twists, doubts, and persistence. In the same way, building a meaningful life doesn't happen through haste. It happens through deliberate, consistent care. A deep, enduring relationship isn't born from rushed passion. It's grown through shared experience. Through trust built slowly over time. A startup that expands too quickly without a solid foundation risks collapse, while one that evolves gradually, adapting to setbacks, gains the resilience needed to last. Even our personal goals, whether it's learning a new skill, embracing a healthier lifestyle, or becoming more emotionally mature, require the same patience. There will be setbacks. There will be slow days, but each step, no matter how small, moves you forward. Patience also teaches us to appreciate the quiet middle, the space between one goal and the next. So often, we're fixated on what's coming, chasing milestones, craving progress, but in doing so, we miss the richness of what's happening right now. Take a moment and consider this. Just because fruit hasn't ripened doesn't mean it's wasted. It's in a vital phase of becoming. Similarly, we aren't wasting time just because we haven't arrived. Growth is happening, even if we can't yet see it. This shift in perspective is especially powerful in a world that glorifies speed. Everywhere we look, there's pressure to hustle, to achieve, to constantly move, but the Stoics and nature itself remind us that transformation is not always loud or visible. An artist doesn't only celebrate the finished painting. They find meaning in the brush strokes, in the moments alone at the canvas. A musician treasures not just the applause of performance, but the quiet repetition in the rehearsal room. Every part of the journey counts. More than that, our deepest personal growth often happens without any fanfare. Just as a seed pushes silently through the soil long before it breaks into sunlight, our inner evolution takes shape before anyone else can see it. The delays, the frustrations, the detours, they're not detours at all. They're preparation. They add depth, insight, and character to our experience. When we finally learn to appreciate these invisible moments, we stop being anxious about the future. We stop rushing toward outcomes. Instead, we begin to find fulfillment in becoming, not just in achieving. That's the power of patience. It teaches us that growth isn't something to force. It's something we tend to, just like nature does. And nature never hurries, yet everything unfolds perfectly, in its own time. The next time you feel restless, or stuck in the in-between, remind yourself, there is no wasted time in growth. Every phase is a part of your unfolding. Progress doesn't need to be loud to be real. So let your roots deepen. Let your understanding stretch, and trust that the more steadily something is built, the more lasting and meaningful it becomes. Lesson 4. The balance of action and acceptance. Some moments in life call for movement, others for stillness, and learning to recognize the difference between the two, that's where wisdom begins. Learning to trust the process is only half the story. The other half is knowing when to act, and how to act without desperation. Many people misunderstand Stoicism. They believe it's a philosophy of passivity, of sitting back and accepting whatever happens. But history tells a different tale. The Stoics were warriors, statesmen, generals, men of grit, action, and endurance. They didn't avoid the battlefield. They simply walked into it without panic. What set them apart was not that they acted, but how they acted. Calmly, deliberately, without clinging to the outcome. Epictetus once said, "Do your duty, but do not be attached to the outcome." That's not just good advice, it's a way of living. Picture an archer. He stands firm, steadies his hand, draws the bow, and releases the arrow. His focus is clear, his aim is true, but once the arrow is in the air, the wind may shift, the target may move, he no longer controls the result. His role is not to chase the arrow, it's to take the shot with all the clarity and care he can give. Life mirrors that lesson in every way. We often crave straight paths. We want immediate results, whether it's a career breakthrough, a romantic milestone, or personal growth, but nothing meaningful happens overnight. A tree takes years before it bears fruit, and so do our efforts. The most powerful ideas, the deepest relationships, and the most lasting transformations emerge not from force, but from sustained effort, one honest step at a time. Rushing, ironically, often weakens what we're trying to build. Like a house constructed on soft ground, anything forced before its time risks collapse. But by allowing things to unfold at their own pace, we create something far more durable, rooted, real, and resilient. And so, one of life's greatest teachings is this: stop trying to force the destination. Learn to trust the journey. Control, as comforting as it may feel, is an illusion. The more tightly we cling to it, the more tension we create. Have you ever noticed how problems seem to multiply the more you obsess over them? Or how clarity often arrives the moment you step back? This principle applies everywhere, in our goals, in our relationships, and especially in our personal growth. Sometimes, the wisest thing we can do is release the grip. That doesn't mean giving up. It means making space for clarity, for change, for new opportunities to rise where we weren't looking before. Think of a sculptor. They don't recklessly strike the stone. They listen to it. They observe the lines, the grain, the potential hiding within. With patience, they carve, not forcefully, but responsively. Artists, musicians, writers, creators, none of them can force inspiration, but through consistent practice and patience, they create the conditions for it to arrive. Mastery, in any form, is never achieved through brute strength. It's born through the balance of effort and surrender. Push too hard, and you crush the process. But pace yourself with presence, and excellence begins to rise. This is not just a human truth, it's a natural one. Rivers don't cut through stone by sheer force. They flow persistently, carving through rock over years with quiet determination. Flowers do not bloom out of season. The sun never rises before its time. Everything in nature moves to its own rhythm, and so must we. By forcing what isn't ready, we disrupt this balance, but by flowing with it, we discover something remarkable: ease, clarity, and harmony. To move with grace is not to avoid action, but to choose your actions with wisdom. Patience does not mean passivity. It means awareness. It means knowing which step to take, and exactly when to take it. Choosing to move with life instead of forcing outcomes is not a sign of weakness. It's a quiet kind of strength. One that comes from trust. From having the courage to believe that things are unfolding exactly as they should, even when you can't yet see the full picture. Patience, when practiced with awareness, becomes one of the most empowering tools we have. It allows us to release the need to control and instead rest in the understanding that the right things will come at the right time. And often, they do. When we stop clenching our fists around outcomes, when we let go of expectations, life has a way of aligning more naturally than we ever imagined. The deepest lessons don't always come from conquest or achievement, but from surrender. From moments where we loosen our grip and simply allow life to guide us forward. Some of history's greatest minds, philosophers, leaders, creators, understood this truth. They didn't force success into existence. They moved with purpose, yes, but also with patience. Their greatness was shaped not just by effort, but by alignment with their purpose, their timing, and their inner clarity. And that's the real art. Learning to live from a place of flow, not force. This doesn't mean abandoning ambition. It doesn't mean drifting without aim. Letting go is not the same as giving up. Instead, it's the wisdom of knowing that resistance creates friction, while aligned movement creates momentum. Think of it like sailing. You still set your course, but you work with the wind, not against it. The most joyful moments, the most fulfilling outcomes, often arrive unexpectedly, and they come not because we demanded them, but because we allowed space for them to appear. When we stop trying to push everything into place, life becomes less of a fight and more of a dance. Letting go doesn't mean loss. It means liberation. It gives us the freedom to show up fully, to act without anxiety, to live without clinging, and in that freedom, there's a peace that constant striving can never offer. It's the difference between treading water endlessly and learning how to float. When we trust the process, stress begins to dissolve, clarity returns, our sense of direction sharpens, not because we're forcing the map to fit, but because we've stopped resisting where we actually are. A life lived in flow isn't lazy, it's powerful. It's rooted in awareness, discipline, and trust. So instead of always striving to make things happen, what if you simply did your best, and then let go? Make the effort, show up fully, then release the outcome. Trust that what is truly meant for you will find its way, on its own time, and in its own form. Lesson 5. Relationships. You cannot force people to stay. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: not everyone is meant to stay. People change, just like seasons. A Stoic doesn't beg for someone to love them. They don't plead for presence or cling to fading connections. They understand, with quiet dignity, that letting go is often the highest form of love. Accepting that not everyone is meant to stay forever is one of the most freeing truths you can embrace. Just like seasons, some people enter your life to bring warmth, growth, or change, and then gently pass. Real growth begins the moment we stop demanding permanence in a world that is constantly changing. Some relationships are meant to bloom for a season. Others last a lifetime. Trying to force what was only meant to be temporary into something permanent is like trying to hold back the tide. It only leads to disappointment. The Stoics taught that clinging to impermanence is a recipe for suffering. But flowing with change, that is where peace begins. Love and friendship flourish best when they are chosen freely, not coerced or clung to. The healthiest relationships grow from mutual respect, admiration, and space, not pressure or possession. When you let go of the urge to control others, when you stop trying to make someone stay, you allow connection to become authentic. If someone truly belongs in your life, they'll remain not because they're bound, but because they want to be there. This understanding is a kind of emotional maturity. It's not cold or uncaring, it's wise. It honors the truth that every individual has their own path, and sometimes, that path must diverge from yours. Think of a garden. If you overwater a plant, even with love, you drown it. In the same way, suffocating a friendship or romantic connection with neediness or fear only drives it further away. Space is not absence. It's what allows people to breathe, to choose, to grow alongside you rather than under you. And if they choose to walk away, it doesn't mean the relationship was a failure. Quite the opposite, it means it served its purpose. Maybe it brought joy, healing, learning, or simply companionship when you needed it most. Gratitude is the key. When you approach relationships with gratitude instead of expectation, you stop fearing their loss. You begin to cherish them for what they were, not for what you hoped they would be. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting or erasing memories. It means honoring what was, while making space for what may still come. There is a rare kind of grace in learning to love without gripping. To appreciate someone fully without needing to own them. And in that grace, both people are freed, not from each other, but from the weight of expectations. Even if someone leaves, what they gave you, their presence, the memories, the lessons, remains etched into your experience. That's what stays. That's what matters. A wise person knows that no relationship is ever truly lost. Every soul we encounter leaves an imprint. Whether they stay for a chapter or a few pages, they become part of our story. And by loosening our grip, we open the door for something even more beautiful, new bonds to grow, deeper connections to form, and perhaps even old friendships to return in unexpected ways. Practicing emotional detachment, in a healthy form, doesn't make us cold, it makes us resilient. It turns fear of endings into trust in transformation. Because like nature, we aren't meant to stay frozen in one season forever. Lesson 6. Your worth is not measured by someone else's opinion. Sometimes, the greatest challenge isn't letting someone go. It's not letting their judgment define who you are. Letting people go with grace doesn't mean giving up, it means making space. Space for peace, for clarity, and for life to flow forward without resistance. And just as we learn to release our grip on relationships, we must also learn to loosen our anxious attachment to ambition. In today's world, we're told to hustle endlessly, to grind, to chase, to never slow down, but this relentless pursuit often comes at the cost of our inner calm. The Stoics offered us a different path, one rooted not in desperation, but in alignment. They taught that it's possible to pursue greatness without anxiety, to work toward our highest purpose without letting that purpose consume us. Take Marcus Aurelius, for example. He didn't scramble for power. He didn't scheme or force his way into the throne. Instead, he focused on living with integrity and preparing himself for whatever role life called him to play. And when leadership arrived, it was a natural extension of who he had become, not something he clawed toward with fear. This is what it means to act with clarity and composure. When our actions are deliberate and measured, we move with strength. Not the strength that comes from pushing harder than everyone else, but the kind that comes from being deeply rooted in who you are. Ambition, by itself, is not the problem. It becomes a problem when it's fueled by fear. There's an old proverb, "He who chases two hares catches none." The same applies to modern life. A mind divided by obsession and pressure often burns itself out before it ever reaches the goal. But a calm mind, one that moves with intention, achieves far more over time. Real achievement doesn't come from frantic bursts of energy. It comes from consistency, from quiet, focused steps taken over months, years, even decades. Whether you're building a business, crafting art, or nurturing personal growth, the most powerful progress is always long-term. Fear-driven ambition might give you a fast start, but it rarely leads to something lasting. It's the steady approach, the one driven by clarity and purpose, that stands the test of time. The greatest artists didn't rush their masterpieces. The most brilliant thinkers didn't form their ideas in a single night. They returned to the work again and again, embracing failure, refining their path, and trusting in the process. This is the essence of true ambition, not speed, but direction. When you embrace this philosophy, something shifts. You stop measuring success by quick wins. You stop basing your worth on external validation. Instead, you begin to fall in love with the work itself, with the learning, the creating, the evolving. And that joy, that depth of engagement, is what gives your efforts meaning. The Stoics understood this intimately. They knew that ambition is noble when it's rooted in purpose, not panic, and they lived with the wisdom to move forward steadily, not frantically. So instead of rushing toward your dreams, consider this. What if you walked toward them with intention, step by step, fully present, and completely grounded? Lesson 7. Peace is found in letting go of control. Not everything in life needs to be gripped so tightly. Some things are meant to unfold, not be forced. After all, if ambition is to serve us, it must be rooted in inner calm, not external pressure. Real fulfillment doesn't come from chasing applause or obsessing over outcomes. It arises quietly, from within, from the peace of knowing that you've given your best, regardless of the result. And that's where the greatest value lies, not in the final destination, but in the journey itself. Those who chase only trophies often reach the top only to feel strangely empty. Why? Because they overlooked the process, the long, winding, often silent path where growth actually happens. That path is where character is built, where insight takes root, where resilience is forged. This becoming is the true reward. But walking it well requires balance. There's a subtle line between ambition and anxiety, between the hunger to improve and the fear of not being enough. To grow with strength and grace, one must pair determination with emotional detachment. Work hard, yes, but don't attach your self-worth to every result. Strive for excellence, but don't let it enslave you. Ambition, when powered by a calm heart and a clear mind, becomes a driving force, not a heavy burden. It lifts you. It energizes you. It doesn't drain you. And when you stop trying to force success, a surprising thing happens. The space you once filled with stress becomes open ground for opportunity. The future unfolds more naturally, like a field blooming in its own time. To understand this, picture a farmer. He plants a seed with care. He waters the soil, nurtures the ground, but he doesn't dig it up every morning to see if it's grown. He doesn't shout at the clouds for faster rain or yank the stalk to make it stretch. Instead, he tends with quiet patience, trusting nature to do what it does best. Your ambition is no different. Nurture it, feed it, and trust the rhythm of your own growth. The more you align with this principle, the more success becomes a byproduct of dedication, not something you have to chase breathlessly. Growth cannot be forced beyond what is sustainable. Just like a tree doesn't rush to reach the sky, your dreams don't need to unfold all at once. What matters is that they grow well, with roots deep enough to endure. The Stoics remind us, peace is found in the effort itself, not just the outcome. Every hour of focused work, every small step, carries value, even if it doesn't immediately shine. Your ambition should be your compass, not your chain. Let it guide you, not exhaust you. Pour your energy into steady, intentional progress, and you'll not only go farther, but enjoy the road beneath your feet. True success, then, isn't just about what you build, but about who you become as you build it. So be patient, stay grounded, act with purpose, and let your rewards come naturally. Lesson 8. The Art of Adaptability. In a world of constant motion, our ability to adapt, not our ability to control, is what determines how well we endure and evolve. Building on that balance between ambition and surrender, there's another vital ingredient for a resilient life: adaptability. The ability to pivot without panic, to bend without breaking, is one of the clearest signs of inner strength. Adaptability doesn't mean abandoning your values or giving up on your goals. It means having the wisdom to recognize that not every battle is meant to be fought head-on. Like a skilled warrior who surveys the terrain, you learn when to hold your position, when to shift your angle, and when to take decisive action. A rigid mindset may feel like strength, but in truth, it often creates unnecessary resistance. Those who insist on forcing one fixed outcome, regardless of reality, are more likely to become frustrated, stuck, or broken by the weight of their own expectations. But those who remain open to new ideas, to new timing, to new paths, they're the ones who grow. They adjust, they overcome. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And in that single insight lies the heart of adaptability, choosing how to respond, even when the plan falls apart. Because life doesn't always follow the script. An entrepreneur might pour years into a startup that never takes off. But instead of quitting, they reevaluate, redesign, and re-emerge with a better model. A student who fails a test doesn't abandon the subject, they find new techniques. A different mentor, a better rhythm. Success isn't about avoiding disruption. It's about what you do after disruption visits. True adaptability is not reaction, it's response. It's a conscious, thoughtful pivot toward a more useful perspective. And often, change is uncomfortable. It can feel like standing barefoot on unfamiliar ground. But discomfort isn't danger, it's growth beginning. It's a signal that you're evolving. Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." Each challenge you face, each unexpected turn, builds mental muscle. It teaches you how to stay composed in the unknown. But to become truly adaptable, you must let go of the illusion that you're in full control. Life is not something you script scene by scene. It's a dynamic, unfolding process. And while you can set your direction, you must also learn to adjust your steps. This doesn't mean losing focus, it means setting clear intentions, while remaining open to how the journey unfolds. It means replacing rigid expectations with flexible strategies. When obstacles arise, ask yourself, what can this teach me? How can I respond better? Because every detour can become a stepping stone if you let it. The most accomplished people in any field aren't those who avoided setbacks. They're the ones who adapted, who learned, who refined, who kept walking, even if it meant changing their pace. Adaptability turns fear into curiosity and turns resistance into growth. By releasing your grip on a single outcome, you make space for even better opportunities to appear, ones you may never have imagined at the start. The Stoics didn't teach us to resist life, they taught us to move with it. Like water flowing around a rock, strength lies not in force, but in flexibility. So ask yourself honestly, where in your life are you clinging too tightly? Is there an expectation that's holding you back, instead of helping you forward? Try loosening your grip, breathe, adjust your approach, and watch how ease begins to replace effort. Because in the end, adaptability is not weakness, it is wisdom in motion. It allows you to bend with life's winds, without breaking under their weight. It is the quiet strength that turns uncertainty into transformation. This is the heart of Lesson 8, adaptability, and it's one of the most powerful gateways to inner peace. Lesson 9, the strength in stillness. In a noisy world that constantly demands action, we often forget that true power sometimes comes not from movement, but from knowing how to pause. Building on the power of adaptability, there comes a lesson that asks for no movement at all. And yet, within its silence lies immense strength. That is the lesson of stillness. To pause, to reflect, to embrace quiet, these are not acts of weakness, they are acts of wisdom. A restless mind, like muddy water, cannot see clearly, but once the water is allowed to settle, what was once cloudy becomes transparent. The same is true for the soul. Stillness is where clarity lives. It is in that silence that thoughts fall into place, that emotions soften, that decisions take shape without being rushed. The Stoics knew this well. They weren't always speaking, they were listening, not to noise around them, but to the still voice within. Marcus Aurelius once observed that nowhere can one find a more peaceful retreat than within one's own soul. And he was right. In the quiet, truth reveals itself. Stillness doesn't ask you to stop growing. It simply gives you the space to grow with awareness, not agitation. This stillness fosters presence. It helps you observe your desires without being ruled by them. It helps you feel your fears without being consumed. It helps you hear the voice of reason, not drowned in panic or chaos, but rising clearly through calm. Seneca once reminded that much of our suffering is born not from reality, but from the imagination's spiraling stories. And those stories grow wild when the mind has no rest. Many avoid stillness because they associate it with inactivity. But stillness is not doing nothing, it's doing something deeper. It's choosing to pause before reacting. It's choosing to listen before speaking. It's choosing to observe before making a move. Even nature itself honors stillness. A lion does not roar all day, it waits. A tree does not grow overnight, it expands silently. A mountain does not react to storms, it endures. There is strength in non-movement, in waiting for the right moment rather than rushing into the wrong one. Learning to be still even for 5 minutes a day can reshape everything. It builds patience, it strengthens focus, and in your relationships, it deepens connection. Instead of replying too quickly, you listen. Instead of assuming, you become curious. In silence, true understanding is born. Stillness also removes the need to fill every moment. In today's world, busyness is mistaken for progress. But much of our transformation doesn't happen through force, it happens during rest. It's in those quiet moments that our ideas settle, our hearts recalibrate, and our next steps reveal themselves naturally. And through it all, the Stoics whisper a reminder: you are not here to control everything. You are here to act with wisdom and let go of what lies beyond your reach. The river does not fight the mountain, it flows around it. The moon does not demand the night end sooner, it simply glows until dawn arrives. And you, too, are part of this same natural rhythm. Letting go is not losing. It's allowing. It's creating space for something better to arrive, for something truer to stay, and for peace to become your companion, not through domination, but through understanding. So ask yourself gently, what in your life are you forcing today? And more importantly, what might unfold if you simply let go? So here we are, at the end of our journey through 9 Stoic lessons that whisper timeless wisdom into the chaos of modern life. You've seen how letting go is not weakness, but power, how stillness isn't laziness, but clarity, how true ambition doesn't scream, it moves quietly, patiently, with purpose. You've discovered that peace doesn't come from controlling the world, but from mastering your mind. Each lesson is like a stone on the path, small, but solid. Whether it was about adapting without resistance, acting without obsession, or loving without clinging, the message is clear. Real freedom begins inside. The world may swirl with noise, but your soul can remain still, unshaken. In a culture that glorifies noise, rush, and conquest, these teachings are revolutionary. They remind us that the most powerful life is not the loudest, but the one lived in quiet confidence, grounded in principle, and aligned with nature's rhythm. So as you return to your own life, your work, your relationships, your dreams, carry this with you. Right finger, let go of what you can't control. Right finger, focus deeply on what you can. Right finger, and above all, choose peace over pressure. Because in the end, inner peace isn't a destination, it's a discipline. If this video sparked something in you, if even one lesson resonated, don't keep it to yourself. Sparkles like, share, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future insights that can shift your perspective, and maybe even your life. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay calm, stay grounded, and keep flowing forward.